Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And it's time to get right back up on the horse after the horse decided to not only kick us off of said horse, but buck us in the face and knock out multiple teeth. It's the Arizona State preview coming off of the bye week. And before we get into the general scouting report about the team, we do want to thank the sponsors of today's show, and that is Greg, Arthur, and Grandma. Thank you, Grandma. And if you want to support the show financially and have your name out at the beginning of every single episode, please be sure to check out the official supporters link found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But let's just dive straight into the Arizona Sun Devils as a team. And this is one of those where, no, this is just a genuinely good team. This isn't me being afraid of any jinxes at all, because I thought Houston was more than capable of beating us, and, turns out they were. But Arizona State is a genuinely good team, and I think that's a massive credit to their head coach in Dillingham. I always keep wanting to call him, is it Kenny?
Kenny's his name, man.
Kenny Dillingham, okay. I get him and Kyle Whittingham confused. At least
I can't imagine why that would be. Because K and ending with Ingham, double consonants, and they're in the middle. Not similar at all.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a massive credit to Kenny Dillingham, who came into a abysmal situation and started putting it together at the end of last season, and is really defined what this Arizona State team is now. And I think that, I think that that's a very, very important thing. They're a 7-2 team at the moment, coming off of a victory against UCF, technically still in it for the Big 12 title race. And so they still have stuff to play for. And they're a motivated team anyway. So just from the very top level, Arizona State is a legitimately good college football team. And that's even if they are missing a few pieces. But, Connor, I'll let you get in your general thoughts before you can take the first two little bullet points about the team itself.
Yeah, this is a team that preseason, I think a lot of people were really projecting to be pretty bad. And this was supposed to be, when we were looking forecasting the season from before it started, this was supposed to be game one of a 2-week homestand where we were hopefully going to be able to just have some stress-free games against some bad teams. But unfortunately, this is the first game of 2 home games in which we have some actually really good opponents coming to town. And particularly Arizona State is a really quality team, led, of course, by Cam Scadaboo, who on more than one occasion this year has engaged in some heroics to keep Arizona State in it and to even give them a few big wins. But one thing about this Arizona State team is Scadaboo missed last week against UCF, and that was a huge hit for them, and they still managed to win that game. But it was clear they were missing Scadaboo, and he is, I believe, pretty much a coin flip pretty much to play this week. I'm going to count on him playing, honestly, because this is such a big game for Arizona State. So I'm imagining he'll play. But outside of Scadaboo, this is a much, much improved team that Kenny Dillingham has put together, who I'm pretty sure is an Arizona State alum as well. So not a lot of coaches coaching at their alma mater, I think, but I think Dillingham is one of them.
Yeah, which, that little extra bit of motivation. But Connor, now it's the part that everyone has been waiting for since, I'm assuming, the bye week. But it's we'll talk firstly about the general scheming for Arizona State.
Yeah, so, and first thing, I looked it up, and Kenny Dillingham did go to Arizona State. I decided after saying that I should probably make sure it's actually true. But now getting into some of their more broad offensive scheming, Arizona State, they're very much a spread power team. They're similar to some of the early Bill Snyder years from K-State. However, unlike a few teams that we faced this year, Arizona State has a 100% confirmed offensive identity. They want to use 11 personnel and a lot of motion to mess with run fits of the defense. And then they want to try and overpower defenders that find themselves out of positions. And a big part of their identity and philosophy is that they run the ball over 60% of the time, nearly 61% of the time, which is one of the highest rates in the country and is fifth most in Power 4. Honestly, running the ball, like you can just watch a game without the advanced numbers and tell that that's important because of how vital Cam Scadaboo is to that team, as well as also Sam Levitt running the ball as well too from the quarterback position. But the advanced numbers and the eye test line up here.
Yeah. And complete aside, the other Power 4s, by the way, are Iowa with the most, and then Tennessee and Texas A&M both run the ball about 2/3 of the time, and then UCF is like half a percentage point, like more of a passing team. Which, if you would have told me Tennessee and A&M were on that list, I would have been very confused given their offensive philosophy. But here we are. But this is very much a team that if this was 20 years ago, we would have said that this was one of the most innovative offensives in college football, just because it's still somewhat rare to see a team blend spread and power principles in the way that Arizona State does. I mean, you'll get a lot of, pure spread teams that implement power running concepts like counter, but you won't get a lot of teams that will do some of the under center running or run dart, which we'll talk about in a bit. But this is, if it was 20 years ago, it would be called a very, very innovative offense. But now it's just kind of a unique and cool one. It's pretty, if I was an offensive coordinator, it's probably pretty close to what I would run, which, means I have a soft spot for it.
Yeah, maybe you can join Kenny Dillingham's staff here. We may not be able to do the show anymore, but
conflict of interest time.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if they have a model professional rules of ethics for coaches. I doubt it.
Probably not doing a podcast for an opposing team is on that list.
I would bet. But moving on to their offensive takeaways, they're the 42nd best scoring offense in the country, which is just one spot ahead of K-State. And they are converting 46% of their third down opportunities. And a really big part of that is that they really don't get behind the sticks all that much. However, on offense, their biggest flaw is red zone scoring. They are 100th in the nation at 79%. Though 65% of those scores are touchdowns. So to me, that screams it's being somewhat consistent with their scheme, but still being a developing program where they running spread power in between the 20s is way easier than running spread power at the goal line, because at the very least, there's the air of, they might be actually throwing the ball, and you have to keep honest with the passing game. Between the 20s, but the closer you get to the red zone, the more the defense compresses, which, not a particularly new story, but it does go to show that it's not an infallible offensive strategy, at least right now with the personnel that Arizona State has. Because again, this is only the second year of what is a pretty intense rebuild, and they're honestly ahead of schedule. So otherwise, still really impressive numbers.
Yeah, and it's not like their kicking game is overly impressive either. Their place kicker is kicking at about a 50% rate, which is a little stinky. But
I remember they lost a game, and Dillingham, after the game and his media availability, said that they were going to have open public tryouts to find a new kicker, which I don't know how those went, but that's pretty unusual to say right after a loss. And I imagine any remaining confidence that kicker had is now gone forever. But
we will never be seeing this kicker again.
Yeah, but definitely a vulnerability for Arizona State, and they have used 3 kickers for what it's worth.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, we mentioned that they're one spot ahead of K-State in scoring offense. It's very different types of scoring, though, where although they are a spread power team, it's the play action game that lets them have the explosive plays, plus Cam Scattaboo doing Cam Scattaboo things. That's where a lot of their scoring comes from, whereas K-State is borderline elite in the red zone, especially throwing the tight ends. The Arizona State relies a lot more on, efficient run, maybe an explosive run, play action pass. That's going to be the majority of their offensive strategy, which we're kicking it old school because that has been the offensive strategy from like the year 1980 to the year 2013. And only then did a bunch of wide zone and spread concepts start proliferating in like the NFL. And obviously you could, spread in college had been around for a very long time before then. But yeah, it really is sort of a more, I Connor, my disdain for the term pro style offense, but it is sort of that more traditional type of offense, which, we can talk about now that we're into the running game scheming.
Yeah. In the running game, their gap zone split is about as close as you can get to 50-50. And it's reminiscent of a lot of NFL running schemes from people like Sean McVay, who, while he's well known for zone running, knows how to complement it and pair it with really good counter running. And in Arizona State's case, they run a bit of dart, which is a power play where the tackle pulls instead of the guard.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of dart, especially from under center, because there are very few tackles that are capable of that. But whenever you do have tackles that are capable of that, they tend to be, larger individuals. So a linebacker has even less of a chance. But yeah, I really, really like the way that Arizona State schemes up their running game. Because, if you have almost an exclusively zone team, you just tell your linemen, oh, you have to move laterally. That becomes the entire goal of the offensive line. Move laterally and make sure that they can't find that specific gap. And if it's just gap scheme, you tell them to go upfield and then let the linebackers clean up. But if it's 50-50, you're asking not only the defensive line, but the linebackers to truly read and react to the play, which, unless you have discovered God's football play, in which there are two, which is power O. And yes, power O is colloquially known in offensive circles as God's play, and wide zone, which is the Shanahan play. Those are the two plays that even if someone knows it's going to be there, if it's executed properly, there's nothing you can do about it. And while they're not quite to that level, Arizona State's multiple running game sets up basically the rest of their offense.
Yeah, which, getting into the rest of their offense, in the passing game, they live and die by play action across the middle, which is a lot like a pro style air quotes offense. They run a lot of digs and crossers, and they're running play action almost a third of the time, 32%, to force defenders up and hit the pass right behind them. That and their 17% screen rate to keep defenses honest laterally makes their passing game a good complement to their running game, but it's still not the feature of their offense.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about playing complementary football. I mean, we've seen some weird mismatches of scheme before in doing this show, like the early Neil Brown years where it was efficient air raid play defense, which was also kind of Troy's MO, which still that baffles me that A, that is a thing that exists, and B, that it was actually kind of effective. But no, this is like top to bottom a complementary offense that has a definitive schematic identity and a definite, this is the game plan. They're not struggling for straws, and they're not really going to try and hit you with a lot of gimmicks either. they're going to do what they do, and they're going to execute it at a high level. It's why a lot of college coaches have the philosophy of, we're going to run like 6 plays, but we're going to run them from all different looks, and we're going to be damn good at those 6 plays. And those teams tend to be more successful than the teams that, are trying to throw basically a bunch of NFL playbooks at you, unless you're Stanford, in which case you have the Stanford playbook, which Andrew Luck said was more difficult to learn than the NFL playbook. That doesn't happen anymore.
You have to go to a academic school that only lets ridiculously smart people in to get stuff like that to work.
Yeah, which... But, but now we can go into the notable players. And of course, Connor, you have the most notable player who may or may not even play.
Yeah, of course, we've been talking about him throughout this entire episode, but it's Cam Skattebo. He's leading contender as of now for first team all Big 12 running back. And he's one of the most punishing running backs that K-State has seen in recent memory. He is just absurdly physical as a runner and runs through contact at any given opportunity. He's averaging about 6 yards per carry and has 676 yards after contact because of his physicality, which is just absurd. For reference, he has 1,005 yards. So over half of his yards are after contact yards. For the type of back he is, that's just incredibly impressive stuff. And even though he's a physical back, it doesn't really mean that he's a slow back or a plodding back. He breaks off runs of 15 plus on 30% of his carries, and a lot of that's due to his vision and physicality. He's very similar to DJ Giddens, and maybe more so than people want to give him credit for. But Cam Skattebo may be hurt going to this game, which he's just such a wildly impressive running back to watch. He's genuinely a fun running back to watch because he has some of the best contact balance that you'll ever see as well.
Yeah, I also think he's immune to concussions, and that's either because he is perpetually concussed or his brain just doesn't feel it anymore. That is the type of runner with which we are operating with. And I do think that the DJ Giddens comp is pretty solid. And I do think that DJ Giddens is more laterally quick and has a few more in terms of make people miss ability. Whereas, and I think that DJ's vision is better, but Cam Skattebo is faster than DJ. And I think that for as good as DJ Giddens' contact balance is, which is already one of his most elite traits, Cam Skattebo honestly is like a tier above him, which I didn't think I would be saying that at the beginning of this year. I didn't think there would be a single running back in the Big 12 that was even on the same tier as DJ Giddens with contact balance. And then Cam Skattebo decides to show up and say, guys, my brain doesn't hurt anymore. So it's a shoulder injury for him, by the way. I think it's his carrying shoulder as well. So I think he's right-handed, and I think his right is his primary carrying shoulder. So Cam Skattebo was begging his coaches to let him in during last week against UCF. We will see who wins that battle. If he plays, it's almost certainly because he's willing to play hurt, because scrappy gym rat, coach's favorite, good run blocker, really daughter dater type. But I
was about to make that stereotype.
Yeah, but he's a genuinely great running back who plays so physical. Like, watching him, if him and Austin Romaine meet in the A gap, the world may blow up. Like, there may be no survivors.
Yeah, he's just incredible. There's not enough really that you can say about him that I think perfectly paints the picture of just how good he is and how valuable he is to this Arizona State team. But I guess one last comparison I'll make is we talked a little bit about his mentality. I think you did. And in that moment, I was kind of thinking that he actually kind of has he brings a similar energy to the field, like the psycho reliever in baseball.
Yeah.
And kind of like a 90s Mike linebacker. He brings that sort of mentality of football to the running back position, which is wildly entertaining as a neutral observer. And I'm sure he's going to be very frustrating on Saturday if he plays, because he's going to be a lot for us to handle.
Yeah. But, it's weird to say that the quarterback is the complementary piece to the running back, but here we are.
Yeah, it really is a little strange, but that's where Sam Levitt falls. He's the QB for this offense. We've seen a little bit of Jeff Sims this year, who is from Nebraska and originally Georgia Tech. But it's been Sam Levitt as the starter, who I believe is a Michigan State transfer.
He is.
And he's fairly young still. But so even though he's getting second billing in this offense due to Cam Scadaboo, he has proved himself to be a more than competent quarterback whose best trait is his ability to work within the offense and take care of the football. He does not make many bad decisions. His turnover-worthy throw percentage is just a shade above 1%, which is really good. He also has a second gear of mobility that makes him a solid scrambling threat as well. The only flaw with his game, though, is that he's not what a lot of people would call a playmaker. He's not slinging the ball all over the field, but the trade-off of that is he takes very good care of the ball and isn't really losing possessions. So, where there's a little take and not having those gunslinger qualities, there's some give as well. And that he's got 14 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions on the season, which is a really good number.
Yeah, and the fact that his turnover-worthy play percentage is actually lower than the number of interceptions kind of speaks to the big problem with if you were to say one thing is a problem with the offense, and that's the receiving game and a lot of drops. But not Cam Scadaboo, Sam Levitt has 206 attempts. That means that on the year he has had a total of 2 turnover-worthy throws. Oh, word! That is elite. That's taking care of the ball at an elite level, and that's what this offense is built on: taking care of the ball. Don't shoot yourself in the foot, and take whatever plays are available to you. And Levitt's able to do that with his legs as well. I don't want to pull the sneaky athlete card because he's just a genuinely good athlete. It's not sneaky athleticism. He's just good at it. But he does have a second gear that you mentioned that, you'll see him scrambling is like, okay, I have the angle. Oh my God. And then suddenly he's like 5 yards in front of you, which I don't envy people who are put in that position, because every time it's happened on film is really funny. And I will continue to laugh about it until the day I die. But Levitt is a legitimately good quarterback. He's just not, I don't want to call him a game manager because I think that has a very negative connotation, but he's a good quarterback who's more than capable of taking care of the ball and running the offense. Though funnily enough, I don't think he's the best quarterback left on our schedule, because Brendan Sorsby, outside of like 4 plays last week, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, but that's not a conversation for now. That's a conversation for next week.
Yeah, and that takes us into their next notable player, which is Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. He's their primary and best receiving option on the outside. However, his biggest problem is his down-to-down consistency. He's a really good route runner with decent size at 6'1", but his hands can be spotty, and he's dropping about 12% of his targets. But he's oddly good in contested catch situations with a 63% catch percentage. So he has a drop the easy one, catch the difficult one sort of quality, which it seems like K-State's had a few receivers like that.
You know exactly where my comp was going, didn't you?
Yep. I'll let you do it since it's yours. But
the comp is either Malik Knowles or Sebastian Taylor. I think it's much closer to – I think it's kind of you put both players into a blender because Seabass was 6'2", wasn't he?
He was a little taller than that. He was like 6'4", I think.
Oh, so both were 6'4".
Yeah, Malik. Yeah, he was around there too, 6'3", 6'4".
Okay, so Jordan Tyson is shorter than both of them, but he just, if he picked a lane, basically, funnily enough, I think he'd be a better player if he just kind of picked a lane between genuinely good route runner or genuinely good contested catch guy, because he kind of gets caught in neutral between the two. And don't get me wrong, it's good to have a well-rounded skill set, but at the same time, you need to pick. You need to help your quarterback, because if the quarterback is looking on a play and he's looking at a receiver who has a 50-50 shot of blowing by the guy, and you just have to throw it over him, or he's just going to have to put it on the back shoulder. If the quarterback is guessing, you're not helping him. Like, if the quarterback does not know where a receiver is going to be, unless it's like an option concept, and even then, this is why I hate option routes that have more than that's more than just you run a hitch or you run a go. That's it. That should be the option. But Jordan Tyson is more than capable of just cooking defenses if he gets into a role. But it's just finding that consistency for him. When he is, on his game, he's probably top 15, top 10 receiver in the Big 12. But when he's not, he's just not there.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add on Jordan Tyson, really, other than he is by far the most leading wide receiver on this team. I mean, he's got 46 catches for 657 yards and 7 touchdowns. Next closest wide receiver, Xavier Guillory, with 13 catches, 178 yards, and 1 touchdown. So really not even close. But they use Cam Scattaboo a lot in the receiving game as well. So he kind of covers some of the deficiencies there. But it really is Tyson and then everybody else in that receiver room.
Yeah. But arguably the most important group from this next bit is the interior offensive line, which is really just one of their guards and their center.
Yeah, Leif Fautanu at center and Ben Coleman are some of the most elite interior offensive linemen in the Big 12. And their versatility in run scheming is really just proving that point. They're genuine do-it-all players in the run game, and they're very good anchors and communicators in the passing game as well. The difference between a bad Arizona State offense last year and a good one this year has largely been because of Scattaboo and those two guys on the interior offensive line.
Yeah, they are a glue guy's glue guy, basically. They are what makes this offensive line gel together as well as they do, which you're used to seeing from the center position, much less so with the guard. Normally the glue kind of comes from, the center and then one of the tackle spots. The left tackle is normally your best overall blocker, so most of the time it's the right tackle that's the glue guy. But they have a legitimately great interior just based off of these two guys alone. And the third guy, who I don't remember the name of at the moment, he's fine, but you can tell that there are times that he just has two amazing players right next to him. And it would not surprise me where none of the guys except for Jordan Tyson that we've talked about that up to this point have been receiving much in the way of draft hype, including these offensive linemen. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Sam Levitt isn't draft eligible, and I think Scattaboo might barely be, but it wouldn't surprise me if any of these guys started garnering a bit more in the way of draft hype. But that's
Scattaboo's a senior, so
okay. Yeah, so he probably is on his way to getting drafted.
Yeah,
but that sort of leads us into the defensive scheming as well, which we mentioned that this team is based off of complementary football, and damn it if their offense is not complementary or their defense is not complementary to the offense.
Yeah, on defense, their motto is attack, attack, attack. They're a very aggressive defense, not only in how they blitz, but in how often they're willing to let guys just play in one-on-one man coverage down the field. Even if they're not blitzing, there are times where it looks like they are, just because of how quickly they're willing to go downhill.
Yeah, and that it's sort of this is, whereas, I struggle to say their offense is, truly old school because of how it blends a bunch of different concepts. No, this is an old school defense. This is an old school, get in your face, try to knock the wind out of you on every single snap type of defense. It is one of the most physical units in the Big 12. I didn't say best, I said most physical. And there's a lot to be said about a defense that really just makes you not want to play them anymore.
Yeah, and further on their defensive scheming, as implied by the above, their primary base is in single high man coverage and a 4-down front that shifts between either under, which is a strong side shade technique from the defensive tackle, over, which is a strong side 3 tech, and even, which is both defensive tackles playing head up on the guards.
Yeah, and the philosophy behind the 4-down front is basically just free up your linebackers as best as you can by having bodies on the line of scrimmage, which is the exact opposite philosophy from a lot of the 3-3, which is, you still have the guys trying to eat blocks, but you're relying a lot more on safeties and linebackers scraping to, and coming downhill in order to make those tackles. But again, it's just a difference in philosophy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way they play defense.
Yeah, and because they're so willing to gamble on defense, their 3rd down conversion rate is about 40%, but they're oddly not good at generating tackle for losses. They're only 110th in the entire country, with just 41 TFLs on the season.
If and I were guessing, just based off of what I've seen, I would almost guarantee you that they're one of the best teams in either 0 to 2 yard gains, because they don't get a lot of tackles for loss, but they're so aggressive and just force situations where it's like, all right, well, congratulations, you have a 2 yard gain. Okay. That's it. But whenever you get to the red zone is where I think the defense is most interesting.
Yeah, in terms of scoring and red zone, they're pretty much bang average, with being 62nd in scoring. But in terms of their red zone, they are one of the worst in the entire country, giving up scores on 93% of possessions, and 73% of those are touchdowns. The weird thing is that they've only allowed 26 total red zone possessions the entire year, which is actually among the best in the entire country. So they're kind of the opposite of a bend don't break. They do not bend, but when they do, they completely break.
Yeah, and I think there are only like 6 or 7 teams that are ahead of them. I know the leader in the country has 20, and I think it's Army. Army is only allowed 20 red zone possessions the entire year. Granted, they run the ball 20%. They run the ball 80% of the time.
I was about to say, it really helps when your opponent has like 3 possessions a game. So
yeah, and so they do play a brand of, ball control on offense, and that does help their defense out and allows them to play that more aggressive, try to force either tackles for loss or short gain style. So because the offense stays on the field so often, it allows their defense to get rested up and just keep that pressure on and just keep fighting and going for the big hits. And to me, that is kind of the biggest takeaway for this defense, which, again, the main takeaway is, as you say.
Yeah, it's They're not the best team at generating tackles for loss with only 41, not the best at getting sacks. They only have 18 or turnovers. But what they really excel at is limiting big plays and limiting damage on a down-to-down basis. So they're certainly not a bend don't break unit, but they are remarkably consistent in what they do as a defensive unit.
Yeah, which I don't think you would have guessed that looking at sort of their defensive track record, at least on the beginning, because just going through their schedule, they played Wyoming, who was one of the worst teams at FBS this year. They gave up 7. Played Mississippi State, 23. Texas State, 28. Texas Tech, 22. KU, 31. Utah, 19. Cincinnati, 24. Oklahoma State, 21. And UCF, 31. So they've been pretty consistent in, giving up. They're going to give up 3 to 4 touchdowns a game, maybe take a few field goals. But the majority of those are wins because they're just able to get +1 on the possession, not necessarily by generating takeaways, but by making sure the other side doesn't touch the ball.
Yeah, it's remarkably impressive stuff from this Arizona State defense. Just in general, this team is just so much better than they were last year. We've really come a long way from prior to the season. This game was hardly on our radar. And now as we're hitting this game, we're in game week for Arizona State. They're a genuinely good and a genuinely concerning team to face.
Yeah. And despite their general defensive philosophy, they only really have 2 really big pieces on defense, at least to note, because in terms of getting pressure, they don't have a single pass rusher that has a win rate above 9%, which if you're looking for a pass rusher, what you're looking at for a win rate is probably like 20%. So they are they're approaching stinky territory. They're not there yet. Stinky territory is like 5%, but they're not good.
It's not good.
Which, now that we said this, I'm really looking forward to the 10 sack performance.
Yeah, of course, what happened? I shouldn't have said that they're not good. They're actually really great. It's just a miss. It's just PFF is tracking the stats incorrectly. But notable defensive players. The first one is Xavier Alford at safety. He's one of the best true run support safeties in the entire conference, and he's a very sound tackler that doesn't get faked out all that often. And he's very good at his pursuit angles and just being in the right place at the right time. That's not to say that he's bad in coverage, because so often when you see a safety categorized as run support, it's just code for they suck in coverage. But no, he's really not. He's only allowed 1 touchdown coverage this entire year, and he's only allowing 50% completion rate when thrown his way, which is pretty impressive for safety.
Yeah, as a safety, and he's not getting targeted. He's had plenty of targets going his way. He's just not giving up a lot in the way of the receiving or the running game. And I think a lot of that is he just understands leverage both in the running game and in coverage. He just knows how to leverage himself to get himself into the best position possible for any given play, which I think that's a trait you more look at in corners, but he has it as a safety. And it's a very good reminder that it's a damn good skill set to have at safety too. He's a really, really, really just good safety, and he will get the run support moniker, like you said, not because he's bad in coverage, which normally run support, that's what it's code for. Again, like you said, he's just so good in run support that he's going to get that moniker, but he's still really good in coverage. And his not necessarily battery mate, in the way that you think of, outside corners having battery mates, linebackers. It's not necessarily his battery mate because it's not the other safety, but it is an outside corner.
Yeah, the last guy's Keith Abney, corner. He did have a tough game against KU that makes his stats look a little bit worse than his performance probably truly is. He's still a very good corner who is only giving up about 60% of the passes thrown his way plenty of opportunities. He's also the team leader in interceptions and is a very willing participant in run defense. It's always a great trait for a corner to have.
Yeah, and he's just really physical as an outside corner. He's going to play press coverage, and he's just straight up going to try and take your lunch money. And he's not going to do it in the way that Kobe Bryant does, where he's going to hold on to your hip pocket for the entire time that you're there. No, he's just playing legitimately good coverage. Like, he's going to have a hand on you at all times, but he's not going to start, pulling on jerseys and stuff like that and then not get called for it. He's a legitimately good press man corner who plays a very, very clean game despite his physicality, which, again, those are two things that you don't normally see for outside corners. Normally, physical corner is code for he's going to get in your face, but he's also going to get like 3 defensive holding calls a game and 2 more that are missed. That's not Abney. He's a legitimately technically sound and yet physical corner. So whoever the X receiver is in this game, or whoever is lined up against Abney, that they probably need a little bit more time in the ice bath after the game, because he's just going to keep pressing them over and over and over again. This is one of those days where, normally you start feeling for the offensive line because that their chest really hurts because they're getting smacked every single play. It's one of those games where the outside corner is going to do the exact same thing. So they may need a little more time in the massage room, a little more time in the ice bath. But so all in all, my general thoughts before we get into stories to watch going into this game about this Arizona State team is they are one of the most well-constructed teams for the type of brand of football that they want to play and their scheme. They are one of the most schematically cohesive teams that we've probably seen during the duration of the show. And it's not even that just the scheme is explosive plays a la 2022 TCU, or the scheme is praying and eating cougar tails like this year's BYU team. This is a legitimate, they know, everyone knows what they're going to do. They're just going to be better at it than anyone else that they've seen. And that makes for a very terrifying team, and that's why they're 7-2.
Yeah, I mean, they're extremely impressive, and all of the things that you said are hallmarks of being just a very well-coached team, which, again, Kenny Dillingham has been really great. He's also one of the youngest coaches, if not the youngest head coaches in all of college football. I'm pretty sure he's in his 30s.
Yeah, he's in his 30s.
As I say, because I was looking, when I was fact-checking his alma mater, it said Arizona State 2012, and I was like, wow. This guy's very young, but I imagine it's a perfect situation for him to walk into because they could get him for a little cheaper because of his youth and inexperience, and they probably in turn gave him plenty of freedom to kind of construct the team how he wanted to, and he's absolutely paid off for Arizona State. And if he keeps this up, given this is alma mater, he probably is going to be around for a while. So. And especially because he's like 33 or something. So we might be dealing with like 40 years of Kenny Dillingham, depending on how long he wants to coach.
Oh, boy. What a grand time to be alive. I'm just throwing this out here. Kenny Dillingham would probably, if I were a voting member of the Big 12 media, Kenny Dillingham would get my vote for Coach of the Year, not Kalani Sitake. And the entire reason for this is because of the eye test. And I will not be elaborating.
I think that's fair. And as somebody that watched parts of the Utah BYU game, I'm going to concur. With that being said, though, Utah athletic department members really should relax a little bit.
Eat a Snickers. Go outside. Enjoy life.
Not you and you're hungry. Utah AD, whose name I cannot remember.
It's not worth remembering. Anyway, but for me, the first story to watch going into this game is, how does K-State deal with the physicality of this Arizona State team, because I think the only team that even gets remotely close to, weighted, I suppose, quote unquote, physicality would have been Tulane. And Tulane gave us fits, which was terrifying at the time and still kind of is. But yeah, I'm curious to see. I don't have a good answer. I'm just curious to see how K-State handles the physicality of this Arizona State team, given that it is everywhere.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge storyline to watch, particularly coming off a bye week, which K-State has historically had like mixed success. This year we do have a win off of a bye week, but I believe it was Oklahoma State, and they've turned out to just be awful. So
no, I think it was Colorado was our win off of the bye week.
Was it really?
It was either right. Colorado or West Virginia.
It was Colorado. You're right.
Yeah, I'm just curious to see how they handle the physicality. And another part of, seeing how this team handles things is how do they handle the second worst loss of the Kleiman era, the first one in a year that actually counts?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that having this bye week and this gap has been enough time to just like memory hole this that whole Houston game, at least in terms of letting it affect our preparation. That's really the one benefit there, is it happened right before bye week, so we have plenty of time to just flush it. You don't want to completely forget it because you need to learn lessons from the game, but you don't want to hold on to the feelings and like any doubt that comes from it. And I'm hopeful that some more time than usual to digest, process, and get better was beneficial here.
Yeah. And to me, the final thing that I think is worth watching before we get into offensive, defensive MVPs and projections is, can K-State reestablish the running game after, at this point, 3 weeks of it just not being there?
That's a great question. I think there's really great arguments for either of these options. I honestly am not confident to say either of them. I'm really up in the air, and I just don't know because like this is a really good defense, and K-State last few weeks has not really shown a lot of life in the running game. So there's really not a lot based on the eye test and recent history that says that K-State should be able to come out and do much better against this Arizona State running game. The flip side of that, though, is that in the past we have seen K-State been able to adjust their offense late in seasons. I'm thinking the 2020 season, K-State's run game was not very good most of the season until those last 2 games where they were both losses, but the run game was significantly better in those last 2 games. Also having that bye week hopefully was some time to maybe retool and retailor for the offensive line, for Connor Riley and for Avery Johnson. But I just don't know. I can't really make a projection either way, honestly.
Yeah, it's the physicality of Arizona State that gives me pause with it, because I'm not saying that K-State hasn't handled physicality before, because they ran the ball pretty well against Tulane as well. It's just, as of recent weeks, for one reason or another, and weirdly enough, I think it's different reasons for each and every game, they weren't doing as well running the ball. But against a 4-down front, a more traditional front that doesn't move as much as KU's, and although they are going to stack the box like West Virginia did, they're also not going to stack it in the same way where every single soul is looking in the backfield because of the amount of man coverage that they play. Like by necessity, they are going to have to, like, they're going to be susceptible to runoffs just because of how they play defense. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty even call between both sides, which that leads us into offensive and defensive MVPs. Connor, you can start with the offensive side.
I'm going to roll with Avery Johnson on this one. I think that we really need him and he needs to have a big week, particularly coming off of what was not just probably the worst performance of his season, but the worst of his career, maybe against Houston. He's in desperate need of a bounce back, and I think this could be a huge opportunity for him.
Yeah, I agree that Avery Johnson's a really good pick, but my pick is going to be more based off of schematics, because a really good way to beat a defense that is going to play a lot of man coverage and blitz a lot is twofold. One, well, technically three. One is you have really, really good outside weapons. Jace Brown's a really good receiver, but I'm not sure that he's, sort of that elite number one X receiver. He's just really, really good. Garrett Oakley would be another good option in the receiving game because he's a mismatch problem. But to me, the most obvious mismatch problem is, say it with me now, it's Dylan Edwards coming out of the backfield. And Avery in recent weeks has shown the capacity to get to his check down, maybe a little too quickly. But Dylan Edwards against a team that's going to play a lot of man coverage and with linebackers that, credit to them, they're not bad athletes. They're just not Dylan Edwards. So I think that Dylan Edwards has a massive opportunity to make a difference in this game and sort of be that difference maker in a way that, DJ Giddens, if DJ Giddens isn't able to get going in the pure running game and we have to throw the ball around, which losing formula for us, spoilers for K-State wins and K-State loses, if K-State has to throw the ball, the winning formula to do it is find someone that can break press, which to Jace Brown's credit, he is pretty good at breaking press, and be willing to just take whatever the defense gives you and hope they get over aggressive in how they tackle. And that just has Dylan Edwards written all over it. So my pick is Dylan Edwards. And on the defensive side of the ball, my answer originally was going to change depending on if Cam Scadaboo was playing. And then I thought about it a little harder, and I'm like, wait a minute. No, it doesn't. It's Austin Romaine. Austin Romaine has been the best run defender and probably the best defensive player on the field at any given time, and that's including Brendan Mott and Marquise Siegel, who Brendan Mott may have played himself into a draft position this year, which is insane. But to me, the obvious pick is Austin Romaine against a team that is going to play very, very physical. I would kind of project Dez to have a tough game because if he's going to stick his nose in it, he is a little light in the ass to be doing that against a physical offensive line like this. That's not to say that he can't just run around them, but Austin Romaine is my pick for defensive MVP.
Normally I try and pick somebody different just to talk about someone different, but I'm just not even going to do that this week because I think Austin Romaine is a really obvious pick here. So I'm not even going to reiterate really anything because I don't think I can add anything really to this discussion other than we really need Austin Romaine to just hold on for dear life when he's tackling Cam Scadaboo.
Yeah. Yeah. So Connor, moment of truth. K-State wins if and K-State loses if. I
think K-State wins this game if they're able to I don't know if I want to say shut down, but limit Cam Scadaboo big runs. I think if they can keep Scadaboo from getting a ton of these chunk runs that he seems to be getting so often, that and also holding on at first contact. I mean, I understand it's probably going to take most of the time multiple people to bring him down, but you, at the very least, if you're the first person there, you need to just grab hold and not let go. I think a K-State can limit what Cam Scadaboo is able to do in terms of both explosive plays and explosive touchdowns. Then I think that's a potentially a good winning formula for K-State. That's assuming he does play. But K-State's going to lose this game if they get made completely one-dimensional again. I think if K-State can't get at least an okay running game going, then I think it could be a really rough night because they're going to be forced to pass more than they would like to. And I'm a little worried about passing against such a physical defense with our receiver core.
Yeah. So for me, K-State wins this game if they're able to get an early lead and just not lose time of possession by more than 10 minutes. Or honestly, probably get that down to 7 minutes. If K-State is the team that scores first and also doesn't let Arizona State play their ball control part of defense at the beginning of the game, like the key is fast start here. Because once you get Arizona State into a situation where they are down, their offense is just not designed to get themselves back into games where there's a little bit of separation. Their offense is designed to control the ball, make sure that the other team doesn't get as many possessions so they can't start to separate. Is that me saying that this is a team that's fully incapable? You know, if K-State scores the first 10 points, Arizona State can't come back. No, I don't think that. I think that Arizona State could come back. I just think that their offense is antithetical to that idea being their main strategy. And getting that early lead and trying to limit the damage in terms of time of possession is the way that K-State wins this game. But very similar to you, Connor, K-State loses this game if Arizona State is able to possess the ball for, I'd say, more than 7 or 8 minutes than K-State, which doesn't sound like a lot. But then you realize that's over a tenth of the game. that is over a tenth of the game difference. And Arizona State is very, very good at running the ball. They're very, very good at just not creating negative plays for themselves or digging holes for themselves that they have to get out of. So if K-State doesn't generate anything in the way of either pressure or turnovers, and they just let Arizona State play the way that Arizona State wants to play, that is the losing formula for K-State. But I think it's time that we get into official projections. And perhaps for the first time in Alleycats history, I think that it is the home field advantage that ultimately makes the difference in this game. Because Arizona State hasn't faced an environment like they're probably going to get in Manhattan. I think that that's going to rattle them a little bit. I don't think it's going to rattle them a lot, but it's just going to be enough for K-State to. This is going to be one of those games where it feels like K-State probably escaped more than anything else. But against a team that's so well coached and so physical, that's really all you can hope to do. My projection is K-State walks away victorious 28-24.
I think that's a solid projection. I'm going with K-State as well. I'm thinking it's going to be 35-31. So
they're mirroring the UCF score, but in reverse.
Indeed, that's exactly what I was thinking. But I think K-State's going to be able to hold on in this one.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's not going to be stressful. Because this game is going to be stressful.
Yeah.
But do you have any final notes before we sign off?
No, I got nothing else other than we are almost done with the regular season now. That's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is a little bit sad, especially given events. But with that being said, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggieVilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I am at Connor Boutsler, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store and the supporters link, both found in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. We're come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.